This is a News 8 special report from Wood TV.
Okay. Okay, cool.
Thirty seconds out from live. Ten seconds out from live.
This is a News 8 special report from Wood TV.
Good morning. We are here with important information we know you've been waiting for about education. Kent County school leaders are about to hold a virtual news conference to go over their plans for the next school year. They're doing this over Zoom. You can see it's just getting started now. We'll listen in and see what they have to say about those fall plans.
Plan for the future. I'd like to recognize our committee members. From Kent ISD, Ron Kniff, Superintendent; Ron Kaler, Assistant Superintendent; Kevin Phillips, Assistant Superintendent; Kelly Brockway, Director of Teaching and Learning; Chris Glass, Director of Legislative Affairs; Sunil Joy, Research Data Analyst. From our local public school districts, Dr. Ron Gorman, Grand Rapids Public Schools. My name is Kevin Phillips, Wyoming Superintendent of Godfrey Public Schools. Dr. Heidi Katula, East Grand Rapids Public Schools. On behalf of Mike Scheiber, Rock Superintendents Association, Scott Smith, Cedar Springs, thank you for joining us today as we share recommendations and preparations for a return to school in the fall. The scope of responding to COVID-19 is all-encompassing. ISD staff, schools cannot do the work alone. Working over. We're honored to have key community partners with us today, all service collaborators and advisors in this vital work plan for the future. I'd like to take a moment to also recognize our committee members, partners that will be Kent ISD, Ron Kneff, Dr. Adam London, Administrative Health Officer, Kent County Health Department, Tina Fries-Decker, President and CEO of Spectrum Health, Rick Baker, President and CEO of Grand Rapids Chamber of Commerce, Dallas Lanier, Chairperson, Black Impact Collaborative, and Chantel Vandergillion, 2020-21 Region 3 Teacher of the Year from Wyoming Public Schools. Our hearts go out to those that have been directly impacted by COVID-19 and to those that are grieving the loss of loved ones. The COVID-19 pandemic created a health crisis that we are still coming to grips with. Schools quickly adjusted to develop continuity of learning plans to support students and families with academic, social, emotional, and nutritional needs. In addition, the shutdown of our economy created a financial crisis for many individuals, businesses, and our public school system. Our schools are taking a comprehensive approach for a safe return in the fall. While safety will always be our primary concern, the impending financial crisis weighs heavily on school leaders. A return to school in the fall with necessary safety protocols is likely to require more resources, not less. We urge our community to stay informed on this issue and have your voice heard in support of public education. The committee created a framework for decision-making that will guide schools as plans unfold over the coming weeks. The recommendations are summarized by 4 key categories: COVID-19 prevention and response, student-centered innovation, creating multiple reentry plans, and engaging community stakeholders. As schools plan for a return to school in the fall, it is critical that we implement best practices for the safety of our students and staff to prevent the spread of COVID-19 and respond appropriately in the event of a positive test. The Kent County Health Department is a trusted partner to guide schools on policies and practices based on the most current data and evidence from state and national health organizations. I'd like to introduce Dr. Adam London to share more on how the health department will support the return to school. Welcome, Adam.
Thank you, Kevin, for that kind introduction, and good morning, everyone. It's our job at the Kent County Health Department and our pleasure to work with KISD to ensure the safety of students and the staff in our schools and our community. It's also our responsibility to make sure that their families back home are protected, and that's a key part of the planning as well. Schools are a top priority for our health department, both for the sake of infection control, but also for the advancement of education that we know correlates so well with wellness and health in our community. This is personal. It's also the Kent County Health Department, and to all of us, it's our community, it's where we work and live, and making sure that our schools are safe and low risk is very, very important to us going forward. I've appointed Joanne Hoganson, the Director of Community Wellness here at the Health Department, as our liaison to KISD to make sure that the planning is effective and to work side by side with school leaders throughout the community during this pandemic. She's working to provide guidance and assistance in our efforts to contain the disease and ensure that education is happening for our children. I'd like to thank Joanne for all the work that she is doing. I also appreciate the planning that KISD has done so far. It's very wise to prepare for some degree of social distancing when schools reopen. It's highly unlikely that the school experience is going to be back to normal anytime soon. It's likely that kids won't be able to be 60 kids on a bus and that we won't have 30 kids in the same time in a classroom until we have better ways of stopping transmission and making sure that that is a low risk environment for our children. The challenges for our superintendents is not just the safe operation of schools, but also ensuring that there's no transmission of the disease from school children and staff to grandmothers, grandfathers, and other members of the family's extended community. People especially who may be undergoing chronic illness or may be vulnerable for other reasons. And I think that there's an assumption that we sometimes make that that all children are healthy and are very low risk for COVID-19. And we need to be careful about that because we do have many children with underlying health conditions that make them medically vulnerable. We need to protect them as well. So these are challenges that have been addressed by our healthcare systems and others in the business community who have used innovative strategies to continue with their work, but also make sure they're doing that in a low risk way. Businesses that have been identified as critical infrastructure and the governor's executive orders have been doing this for some time now. And there's much that we can learn from them, from partners like Spectrum Health, who have been open during this crisis and who have managed to provide their service and have flow of operation in a low risk way over the past few months. So Kevin, I want to thank you again and thank everyone in the Intermediate School District for everything that you are doing to protect our community. And I want everyone to rest assured that we're all working together to continue the safety of our community every step along the way from now until the time that school resumes in the fall. So thank you, Kevin. And I think that Dr. Heidi Katula from East Grand Rapids is going to speak next.
All right, so thank you, Adam, for your continued support of our local public schools. There's nothing more important than the safety of our students while under our care. And as we prepare for a fall return, the committee recommends district's pilot procedures for screening, sanitization, social distancing, and hand washing during summer programming. While schools won't be able to implement at scale until the fall, business and industry has already begun implementing return procedures, and schools can learn about best practices. Dr. Heidi Katula, Superintendent, East Grand Rapids Public Schools, will share how schools are preparing for safety in partnership with Spectrum Health. Heidi?
Thank you, Kevin. Good afternoon or good morning, everyone. Planning for the reopening of our schools is critically important work, and we're collaborating with business and industry, healthcare, and our community stakeholders. Part of this planning includes health and safety, creating the safest environments we are able to design, preparedness plans that outline all of our procedures, protocols, and mitigation efforts of COVID-19. Instructionally, we are also planning for multiple scenarios depending on what circumstances we face. And most importantly, preparing to support our students' mental and behavioral health. These are critical components of our back to school guides. Part of the work I've been leading as part of this committee is the development of protocols through the partnership and collaboration with health experts at Spectrum Health. We are developing a return to school guide, which is based off of and in partnership with Spectrum Health. We are also developing a return to childcare guide in partnership with Spectrum Health. Planning for K-12, as Kevin mentioned, is a large task. And right now we're looking at what can we do now to prepare for full scale come this fall. And that is where we are focusing on our childcare. Again, we're deeply grateful for the health science expertise and the collaboration we have with Spectrum Health. And with that, it is my pleasure to introduce Tina Friest-Decker, President and Chief Executive Officer of Spectrum Health.
Thank you very much, Heidi. And thank you to all our school leaders for bringing us all together. I am in awe of the amount of planning, effort, and rigor that was required. First to pivot quickly to virtual learning, and now to plan for this next phase for the fall. As a parent of 2 children in our public schools, and on behalf of thousands of our team members with school-aged children, we greatly appreciate and recognize this tremendous undertaking and the sacrifice our schools and parents have made. Spectrum Health is proud to partner and collaborate with Kent County school leaders in sharing best practices, guidance, tools, and resources. These are similar resources to the ones we use within our own health system to care for our patients, communities, and our team members. And it is a privilege to work with the Kent County school leaders to ensure all children have the opportunity to learn and grow. Our goals overlap in so many ways. Like healthcare, education is critical to giving our children the best opportunity for future success in life. The long-standing relationship between Spectrum Health, our Healthier Communities School Health Program, and the Kent County School District has been invaluable in supporting students to address their physical and behavioral health. And this close collaboration is now more important than ever as we all are navigating the uncertainties of this ongoing pandemic. We are strongly aligned with you in wanting what is best for our children and our community. We want our kids engaged in learning, our families supported, and our parents productive. During this challenging time, we value this collaborative partnership tremendously, and we look forward to continue working closely so our community's education system and our students thrive. So thank you very much for engaging with us in this collaborative opportunity, Kevin.
Thanks, Tina, for the investment Spectrum Health has in our local schools through the Healthier Communities Initiative that touches nearly 40,000 students in our region. The Return to School Playbook is a tangible example of how partnering together benefits our community and saves time and resources. Reopening our economy cannot happen in its entirety until schools are also reopened. Schools have served an essential role in talent development, and that role is heightened during this crisis. Rick Baker, President and CEO of the Grand Rapids Chamber of Commerce, to share more on the partnership between business and education to reopen our schools and our economy. Rick?
Thank you, Kevin, and thank you for you and your colleagues' leadership in this important part of our economy and the work that you're doing to help get our schools ready to be reopened in a safe manner whenever we possibly can. Several have mentioned, education is a significant aspect of our local economy. And it makes sense that we would have a strong working relationship between business and education for many, many years. And that true to the West Michigan culture, when times of crisis, we've really heightened our collaboration to make sure that we're all working together for a common goal and a common outcome. The business community and education have collaborated for so many years that the natural connection was easy for us, for all of us. And as Abe mentioned, that the business community is a little bit ahead of as far as reopening and using some of the best practices that they're learning, what's working, what maybe not working, and sharing that information with our education partners is critical so that we're learning from one another. So we are here with the education community. We are a partner with you. We look forward to supporting a safe, successful reopening of our education system because it does play such an important role in our overall economy, both immediate and long term. Thank you, Kevin.
Thanks, Rick, for your leadership and ongoing support of public education. Associated, a key recommendation of our committee was to survey all parents and guardians in Kent County on their perceptions of learning this spring and their feedback for returning in the fall. The insights gained will inform school planning across the region and will also provide perspectives that are unique to each respective school district. Dr. Ron Gorman, Interim Superintendent of Grand Rapids Public Schools, served as a member of our committee and will further discuss the importance that parent voice plays in school decision-making. Ron?
Good morning, and thank you to everyone for showing up to this very non-traditional press conference. As Kevin stated, my name is Ron Gorman. I am the interim superintendent for the Grand Rapids Public Schools and also a member of the Kent Intermediate Superintendents Association. Before I give my brief remarks, I would like to extend my thanks and appreciation to Superintendent Kevin Polson from the Godfrey Lee Public Schools for his leadership on the Futures Committee and for helping to organize this event. I would also like to give a huge shout out and thanks to Adam London and his team at the Kent County Health Department. Our community owes you a tremendous debt of gratitude for everything you're doing to educate, to inform, and to serve our community during this pandemic. A key part of planning for schools to return safely is gathering input from our stakeholders. That's our students, our parents, our staff, and the community we serve. We know that given these unprecedented times, more than ever, we need an all-hands-on-deck approach to ensuring that teaching and learning continues in the safest, most effective manner possible. That means we need to hear from all of our stakeholders, our parents. What worked during distance learning? What needed to be improved during distance learning? And what can districts do moving forward to support students and families? Today is the first part of community engagement. We are announcing an independent county-wide survey to gain input and insight into parent perceptions. The Kent Intermediate School District has contracted with Gartner Marketing to conduct and analyze the survey, a survey. Parents in every district, parents in every school, and the Kent Intermediate School District will be receiving communications regarding information as it relates to how to participate in this survey. Parents, we need to hear from you, so please be on the lookout for this survey. Your voice matters, and the outcome of this survey will inform our plans for returning to school. At this time, I would like to introduce Reverend Dallas Lanier, Chair of the Black Impact Collaborative. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gorman. Thank you for your leadership within GRPS as well. I serve as the president of the Institute of Ubuntu, a Grand Rapids-based Black think tank, and IOU is powering the Black Impact Collaborative, which is a newly formed group of Black-led and Black-serving organizations, both historic and premiering, who together have as a mission to identify and illuminate the needs of Black people in Greater Grand Rapids, particularly in light of COVID-19 and beyond. Inequities across numerous systems were pre-existing conditions in Greater Grand Rapids. And many of these conditions were a daily reality to people in the Black community. However, COVID-19 has helped to shed a bright light on these inequities for the entire community as well. As parents of children currently in school, my wife and I realize that we are our children's first teachers. And as parents and guardians, our voices matter at all times, but especially during this time. This health crisis has impacted segments of our community differently and disproportionately towards the African American community. Through this survey, you can use your voice to share concerns, ideas that will help your school district and also help us as community organizations to provide the resources and the advocacy to serve our children with real educational and household needs as we consider together the options for the future of education. The school reentry survey is designed to gather data along racial and ethnic, as well as socioeconomic lines, so that we can analyze the traumatic impact of this pandemic and how it manifests in different ways throughout the community. Breaking down the data will help us to meet the needs of all members of West Michigan. The Black Impact Collaborative will make sure that the results of the survey will be shared internally with our educational and youth subcommittee, which is led by Dr. Teresa Weatherall-Neal, to help inform future recommendations to local school districts. As parent to parent, I urge you to raise your voice through completing this survey.
Thank you, Dallas, for your advocacy for persons of color in our community, as the data has been clear that the inequities that exist in our system have caused marginalized populations, and in particular the African American and Latinx community, to be disproportionately impacted by COVID-19. We must take action to ensure all segments of our community receive what they need through this crisis. School personnel have been on the front lines of the COVID-19 crisis. Food distribution has been a critical function for each district in Kent County during the mandatory school closing. As an example, Godfrey Lee Public Schools, in partnership with community partners such as Kids Food Basket, has served approximately 90,000 meals per month while school has been closed. This represents more meals than we typically serve while open for school. Our teachers have been heroes throughout this crisis. In addition to implementing distance learning, teachers have tended to the social and emotional needs of students so that when we return in the fall, we are once again whole as a school family. Chantel Vandergillian is a teacher at Wyoming Public Schools and is 2020-21 Region 3 Teacher of the Year, is a candidate for Michigan Teacher of the Year. She'll share her experience in supporting students through distance learning. Chantel?
Thank you for the opportunity to be with you all today. Yes, when schools first closed, the first thought of teachers, administrators, support staff was, how are our students and their families doing? That was priority number one, to find out what did they need and how could we help. Together, I worked with our English 8th grade team. There's 3 of us, and we created a weekly Google form for our students to check in so that every week we knew were there special needs that they had, how was their social and emotional health, and did they need to be connected to counselors or resources. In planning, I sent a Google form out to all of my students. I wanted to know, did they need a paper packet? Did they need to be connected to the internet? Did they need a Chromebook? One of my 8th grade ELA teaching partners received donations for over 120 books from her Facebook friends and family. When she received those books that the students got to pick themselves from a high interest list, she gift wrapped them and either sent them to their homes or gave them out when she was doing food distribution. And my own daughter's teacher, she's in 4th grade at Canonsburg Elementary, he stopped by the week before Mother's Day with a yard sign that said, "Canonsburg Elementary is so proud of you." And on the back, he signed it, "Darby, you rock, Mr. B." Along with that yard sign, he delivered clay, soil, a plant, a paintbrush, and paint so that she could secretly make me a Mother's Day gift. She bounded up the stairs, grinning ear to ear, so excited to see her teacher from a distance. And what he modeled that day was so important. He was addressing my daughter's need to feel connected to her school community and to her teacher, who she missed dearly. And what my teaching partner was doing was connecting from afar with her students and making sure that they had things that they could read tangibly, and addressing those things that aren't just curriculum, but the connections that we all need, and modeling for our students that we need to continue to think about each other, to help each other, and to not stop just because we're not within the four walls of a classroom.
Thank you, Chantel. I really appreciate you sharing the teacher's perspective. As I shared, the recommendations serve as a framework that all districts in Kent County can work with under. More specific plans will unfold over the coming weeks, but we wanted to demonstrate to our community that we're working in partnership, through this process. All of our panelists and attendees, including superintendents from across Kent ISD, are available for questions at this time. We ask our media partners to put the questions in the Q&A, and we will then call on you to ask that question. Thank you for joining us today. Okay, so first question will be from Teresa Wakely from Wood TV 8.
Good morning. Thank you for letting us ask a few questions here. It sounds like for most districts, they're still in the planning stages for specific plans. Is there a plan A at this point, though, as you work on the contingency plans after you hear from all of the parents?
And the Wood TV 8 is muted.
Can you hear me now?
We can. Thanks,
okay,
Teresa.
Good morning. Sorry about that. Thanks for letting us ask a few questions here. I just wondered, it sounds like you're still gathering information from parents in most of the districts to come up with your contingency plans. Is there a plan A, however, for most of the districts at this point?
We're still working on those plans as to what specifics will look like. And as we shared, we hope to pilot protocols over the summer as to what the procedures might look like as it relates to social distancing, screening, sanitization, hand washing before returning the fall. We know the return in the fall won't look exactly as it did prior to the governor's announcement on March 12th. While those specific plans are still unfolding, we want to make sure that parent perceptions are heard and that we do have the chance to learn from best practices in business and industry, and also through piloting throughout the summer. Other school leaders are welcome. Ron or Heidi, if you have additional that you'd like to add there as well.
Teresa, to your question, there's many facets to reopening the schools. As Kevin just mentioned, one is a preparedness plan to ensure our facilities are the safest that we can make them, and to ensure that the people coming into our facilities have been screened under every protocol that we can. Then there's social distancing. So you have your preparedness in one lens, and then you also have your instructional lens through the other. And then also we have to look at our stakeholders. And so there's so many unknowns right now. And with the survey, we'll be able to gain a better understanding of where our families are, where our students are, as far as returning to school. We do know that our students and our families are wondering under what conditions. We won't know those conditions until we get closer to school, but at least to be able to gauge their comfort level. As we know, if our parents are uncomfortable sending their children back, then our students are going to be uncomfortable. If they're uncomfortable, they're not going to be ready to learn. And so we need to gather this data to help inform the work we do as we build those two different levels of preparedness.
Part of our recommendations, it was returning to meet what Dr. Katula mentioned, that we know that we're going to have a range of options to meet the needs of students and families. A question from Charlie Honey was regarding what are the most likely features of what schools will look like in the fall that parents and students should expect. Charlie, do you want to elaborate a little bit further on that question when you refer to features?
Thank you, Kevin. Yeah, I'm just realizing that things are really uncertain, a lot of unknowns right now. Just wondering, what are some of the features that are most likely to be part of school not looking the same in the fall? What are some things about learning and some things about health practices and protocols parents and students should expect probably will be there in some shape or form?
I asked Dr. London to talk about the health practices part of that first, as I see that's another question from a partner, and what are some expectations parents and students and staff may have for health recommendations for return?
Yeah, so we're going to have to be very mindful of the science and what we've learned in the past couple of months and what we expect to learn in the next couple of months. And certainly we expect that we're going to be incorporating elements of physical spacing and of PPE as appropriate for age level, that we're going to be looking at disinfection of surfaces in a much more intensive way. And schools have always been great about infection control, but we need to make sure that that those practices are really very rigorous going forward.
And Charlie, as a follow-up for the education side, oh, we lost him. Ron Gorman, in terms of on the education side, we talked about just some summer protocols that we're hoping to pilot. Any further you'd like to elaborate on that as far as it relates to the education aspects that parents and students and staff can expect?
Absolutely. So I think, like many districts, we had plans in the summer to maybe have some pilots as it relates to some practices that would take place in the fall. Right now, with the executive order, with our social distancing requirements, our summer school right now will look much like school has looked these last 3 months. We're hopeful that maybe somewhere throughout the summer, maybe at the end, we will be able to practice some rituals and routines that are comparable to what may be happening in the fall, a dress rehearsal, so to speak. So again, as of right now, we are in full distance learning mode. I've been very fortunate to represent our district with a task force with Dr. Michael Rice at the state with the Michigan Department of Education. And what I can share is that the preliminary planning that's happening in the ISD and districts around our region is comparable to what's happening at the state level. Districts are being proactive. We are cleaning our facilities. We are thinking about what masks and gloves look like in the fall, taking precautions with our transportation companies. But we're going to have to essentially turn on a dime. We need to be proactive and also be ready to move when those executive orders and those new parameters come out.
Okay. Thanks, Dr. Gorman. I appreciate that. Question related to social distancing. Aaron Albanese from School News Network has a couple questions here as it relates to that. If we could bring Aaron in. Go ahead, Aaron. You can. Yeah.
I just for some reason cut out right then.
I'm sorry, Aaron. If you could repeat the question, please.
Sorry, for some reason my feed cut out. Did you ask me a question?
Yeah, go ahead, Aaron. I saw you put a couple questions in. Feel free to ask a question.
So I was wondering what superintendents are planning in terms of sports, band, extracurriculars, field trips, visitors. What are some potential scenarios with those types of things?
I can start with that one. A comprehensive education is critical to a student's experience in our schools. In many cases, music, arts, athletics create the meaningful experience that students have that are lasting memories of their school experiences. Coaches, band directors, choir teachers are oftentimes mentors that are valuable in the life of a child. So we are hoping that those elements can still be a part of the school experience. However, safety will always dictate that, and we will work with entities like the Michigan High School Athletic Association and the guidance that they provide, and of course from our health professionals as to whether or not those type of programs can exist. I think we're going to see over the summer that some of our community partners like the zoo or museums are going to begin to reopen, and as they do reopen, that we'll learn more about what's the capacity for field trips or other type events like that again make for a comprehensive school experience. But at this point, we don't have answers to those questions, but it is our sincere hope that we can continue those elements of the school experience for our students. Okay, our next question, give me one moment here. This is from Kimibara. If we could bring, I'm sorry, excuse me, Craig, I apologize for that. Annie has the next question here. That's Annie Zetkowski, please.
Yes, hi, good morning. My feed cut out there for a minute. For teachers, what kind of challenges do you anticipate in terms of organizing your classrooms and keeping students separate, especially with very full class sizes?
I'm going to ask Dr. Katula to weigh in on that, as she, as part of our work with our committee, she's also been collaborating with school districts across the state, but also listening to some of the practices from schools across the globe that are already back in session, and just learning more about how we can implement health practices for return.
Hi, Annie. Thank you for asking that question. To Kevin's point, yesterday I was on a call with Israel elementary school that had reopened. Prior to that, a call with Denmark, and prior to that, a call with Korea. As an example, yesterday, the school in Israel has been open now for 4 weeks. There has been no outbreak. They have been social distancing using 3 meters, 6 feet. They have reduced their class size, as one example. And these are all examples that we're learning and trying to determine within our given constraints what we will be able to accommodate. Again, we need guidance and direction as we get closer to the start of school, but we are continuing to plan. And to the point of your classroom, your superintendent, your leadership team, along with your community, will be preparing for and outlining what distancing practices will be necessary to ensure the safest environment. But I would encourage you to think outside the box and think about what it might look like if you have half a class one day and the other half of the class the next day, to ensure we're a third and a third. We need to think about all different possibilities as we iterate through these uncharted times.
Thanks, Heidi. Monica Scott has the next question. Monica, unmute and feel free to ask your question.
Dr. Linden, I was hoping that you could elaborate a little further on maintaining safe, low-risk schools. I think parents are wanting a little bit more insight into what that looks like. Is it possible to return, if it was safe, to return everyone at once, or if it's more likely that a hybrid situation would work, or a staggered situation? Can you talk a little bit more about how, for parents that are concerned about that safety, how you would achieve that?
Sure, Monica, thanks for the question. And I think Dr. Katula touched on it a little bit in her comments to the last question, and that we're going to have to be mindful of how we know this virus spreads, and that's largely through proximity, and it's through inhalation of the virus from people who are infected. And so we know that the indoor environment and group gatherings are inherently more riskier than other environments. And so, as you know, that also describes the traditional classroom setting. And so I think our school leaders are very open-minded right now. They're very open to new technologies, new schedules, looking at information from around the world for examples for how we can do this in a low-risk way. And we're never going to get to zero risk, and I think that's important for everyone to know, whether it's in school or the grocery store or any place, even at home. We're not going to get to zero risk of transmission. But it's important that we're smart about this, that we incorporate the best science and the latest information and the best case studies from around the world to make it as low risk of an environment as possible. We need to get kids back to school. We need to make sure that education doesn't suffer because of this pandemic. There's already enough suffering because of illness. Education needs to occur, and we need to do that in a low risk way. And I think that the approach that's being taken is very smart, and it may create a school year that looks very different than most school years, but education really needs to be a priority.
It's very likely that a hybrid or blended model will be how schools open in the fall, and we need to prepare for that, especially in consideration of the Center for Disease Control guidelines on reopening schools. You know, the requirements that are listed for a safe return are quite stringent, but they're in the best interest of safety. And so those are preparation that school districts are making. And we're also mindful that some families want to continue in a remote atmosphere. And so school districts are also looking about how we can provide choices across the spectrum to meet each student and parent's need. Okay, Anthony Clark has the next question.
Sorry, thank you. My question, I think it was actually answered, but I actually came up with another one. I was wondering about, is Kent ISD working with surrounding area ISDs for teachers, parents, students when they live outside of Kent County, looking at child care issues, teachers going back and forth, and all of that. And I think the first question was already answered, but I was looking at were the protocols going to be uniform throughout Kent County? Thank you very much for taking my question.
Yeah, I can, I'm gonna ask, well, as Adam London shared, the guidance that all schools will operate under for safety are gonna be universal. But as the health department has done by disaggregating data by specific zip codes and the conditions across Kent County and the 20 local districts and the over 100,000 students that attend may look different. And so the approach within that framework will be condition specific as to what the response might be in relation to, are we collaborating with educators across the region? Yeah, absolutely. And we've been in contact with Ottawa County, who has a similar work group, and we maintain regular communication with our partners in Muskegon County as well. And that also goes with our associations across the state. And we have membership that attends both the Michigan Department of Education work groups that have been formed, and I anticipate that we'll have membership on the Governor's Council for Safe Return also. Okay, Kim Ibarra has the next question.
Hi there. Yeah, I'm just wondering for teachers, I know that the plans are not set for the fall, but do you have any suggestions for teachers who are already beginning to plan? Should they be searching out maybe some resources for a little training on virtual learning or something in that realm? Do you have any suggestions for teachers that are planning right now?
So I'd like to ask Dr. Katula, to answer this, one of our recommendations from the committee is to collaborate with employee leadership regarding the teaching and learning conditions for when we return, because it's critical to have teacher support staff voice in that. And she's been leading that element of our recommendations.
Hi, Kim. Thank you for being a part of the call and asking that question. As Kevin mentioned, some of the work that I've been doing as part of the subcommittee is meeting with the MEA across the state to have conversations about what our staff will need. That will become very much at the local level as we continue to develop preparedness plans within each district. And as we get closer, we know more about what our conditions will look like. I think there's no question if there's an outbreak or if there is a requirement to close the school for any necessary reasons, then our staff will have to move back into a virtual platform. I do think the way we're learning now is going to change the future of what we deliver. It has to, right now at 9 weeks, almost 10 weeks in this environment. There's some things that work well. There's some things that don't work well. And we need to be reflective in that practice and constantly think about continuous improvement and how we collaborate together within our profession to find the best ways, most effective ways to engage children and to make their learning meaningful and relevant. And so I do encourage, and I know each district will be working with their associations to plan additional training. We do need to work with our staff to learn what they need. And sometimes it's difficult to ascertain that when you don't know. And so, but that needs to be constant work that we do to make sure that we are nimble and that we can continue to provide the best learning for our students and the best collaboration and learning for our staff.
All right, thank you. Charlie Honey has the next question.
There we go. Thank you, Kevin. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah.
Yeah, do you have an idea, and I would guess maybe you're working with the state on this, but do you have an idea as to approximately when you're going to need to have a general plan in place for the fall for learning and for health protocols? And how will that be decided upon? Is the full KISA group going to come back together, come up with some common baselines that they want to use? How is that process going to work? And by when do you need to have this in place?
It's a good question. I know the specifics of what plans look like or what people are really asking for. But as we found, the stay-home orders have continued to be extended, sometimes with not as much notice. And so right now, that is extended through June 12th, and we're going to follow those, guidelines from the state regarding the stay-home orders. But as previously, mentioned, we want to pilot protocols during summer programming. So, for instance, the My School at Kent summer program, which is for high school students for credit recovery, is hoping for in-person engagement after July 1st. And a key element of our school recommendations from the committee is that and Kent ISD is going to host a free summer school open to each child in Kent County. It'll be done virtually, but as a way to continue learning. And My School at Kent is a part of that, which has a blended model for some in-person, and the hope is after July 1st. We'll also have a work group that is going to continue to examine the different hybrid options and make recommendations. So that'll be up to the local district as to what option will be best. But again, we see this as a framework. So there isn't a specific date. I would say as soon as possible. But again, we have to use the current health information, as Dr. London shared, that there isn't as much as concern about transfer on things like paper, that the real risk with COVID-19 is that direct person-to-person through droplets. And so, the science has evolved on that. We're monitoring the data as to what the positive tests throughout the region, and in specific, those zip code by zip code analysis of that. So our hope is to get things as soon as possible, but prior to any decision, it's our hope that we can pilot these practices before making a final recommendation. That's going to be incumbent on what's the guidance we get from the state. All right, Teresa Weekly is next.
So Kevin, I think you kind of touched on what I wanted to know is what the deadline here is, but what do you think the latest time frame would be? Because parents want to know what's going to be happening. I know you're waiting for data, but if you had to pick the latest date possible that you'll be letting parents know what to expect, what would that be?
All schools in Kent County are scheduled to start on August 24th. And that's been a common thing that we've tried to do to try to coordinate as far as it relates to our center-based programs and career tech programs. As far as a firm date at this time, we don't have a decision on that. The purpose of today is to share that we are working in collaboration with our partners, that we are examining these issues so our community knows that there's active work being done and that they will have a voice in that decision. And as it unfolds, we will continue to keep our stakeholders involved in that process. Media partners, the questions that are in the chat we will answer, but we will not answer any further questions after that as we will wrap up. Aaron Albanese has the next question. Aaron, you're on mute.
This is for Chantel. What kind of instruction has worked well and what hasn't during this time period? And what would you like parents to know about in terms of how you are feeling as a teacher?
Thank you for that question, Erin. I'm gathering feedback now from my students. I sent out an end of the year survey, what worked well, especially in planning, this planning that we're doing possibly for the fall. And students are saying videos. I think videos of instruction are the closest we're getting right now to mimicking in-class instruction. And they've also said that they've enjoyed being able to write about how they're feeling and to process. We don't really know what we think until we write about it and work through our thought process. So the writing and reading high interest articles and short stories are what my students are saying are working for them. I'll know more as more students are filling that out this week. And what I'd love for parents to know as I talk to other teachers and how I'm feeling hopeful. And I want all parents and the community to know that we are going to work tirelessly to make sure we deliver high quality instruction, no matter if it's from home or if we're in school and if we have half of the class or if we have the whole class or if it's some sort of blend of being online and in person. So I'm hopeful that we will always give your children what they deserve and what they need to be successful.
Aaron, do you have a second question as well?
Yes, I do. How are schools addressing possible cuts in light of the reports of a big decrease in the school aid fund and doing that while also planning for reopening scenarios?
Yeah, I'm going to ask Dr. Gorman to start with this one in a moment. And as I shared, the health crisis created this financial crisis that we're all coming to grips with as a community. And it's likely that returning with the protocols necessary in place for safety are going to require more resources, not less, at a time that state tax rolls are decreasing. So Dr. Gorman, if you could speak a little bit about how you're approaching the financial implications of this crisis.
Sure, Kevin, thank you. If the cuts come to fruition, this will absolutely be devastating for our school districts. I think right now what we can do as leaders is do as many preliminary things as possible. We in the Grand Rapids Public Schools are trying to keep those cuts as far away from the classroom as possible, as far away from the buildings as possible. So really looking at some practices on which we can scale back during this very difficult time. But there are going to be some very difficult decisions to be made as we move forward as it relates to programming across the board. So my team has been working on looking at cuts in every single area of the school district, but again, trying to do our very best trying to avoid those cuts in the classroom. That's our number one priority at this time. But if the cuts are anything like we think they will be, this will be devastating for not only our school district, but all the school districts in the state.
And we're asking for financial support of our public schools from the federal legislators. We know the state sales tax has declined. We know that income tax is likely to decline with the significant population on unemployment. And so when we think about the response to COVID-19 and the $2 trillion from the federal level that has gone to response, less than 1% of that has gone to K-12 education. And we need a more robust response to protect K-12 because the cuts are not sustainable. There's no way that any district can sustain the cuts that are being proposed at this time. Dr. Katula, any specific examples as it relates to your district and some of the action planning and advocacy work that you guys are undertaking to navigate the financial implications?
We're all in the same place. It's very concerning to approach bringing schools back open when we don't have the financial resources that we should have in order to prepare both instructionally as well as for preparedness and safety. The cuts that we're facing, that we know we're going to face next year, it's a question whether or not we'll continue to receive that shortfall this current year. We need the support of our full community. There's a lot of information out and available for parents. I know there's many articles that are available. in East Grand Rapids, we have had a number of town halls. We had 2 with our staff, 3 with our community, and a recording of that is also available on our website. We've worked with the KISD to create School Finance 101 videos as part of the Futures Committee work that we're doing, and those are also available on the Kent Intermediate School District website, as well as some local district websites. School funding is so complex, and people don't have the capacity right now, on top of everything that they've gone through this closure as well as this pandemic, to find the space and time to understand how schools are funded. The short version, because we're asked that a lot in our town halls, is how do I explain to people why schools don't have the money? People think that schools automatically have it, but when 62% of our funding comes from sales and income tax, there is no sales tax currently to pull from. And with our economic environment and the layoffs that are currently in place and the unemployment rates being what they are, the income tax is also very low, and will have a continuation or a compounded effect as we continue to proceed and people aren't able to get back to work or aren't able to find the employment to get back to work. Legislatively, we have a committee, a PTO committee here in East Grand Rapids. It is open, and we do encourage people to attend. We have another meeting coming up later this week. We also are supporting the Our Kids, Our Future, which is an advocacy campaign that's gone statewide and is available for communities and families to use a pathway to communicate with state and federal legislators. Education is critical to bringing our economic environment back online. We need bipartisan support to do that work. Hopefully that helps speak to some of the questions you want me to speak to, Kevin.
That is Dr. Heidi Katula speaking right now with the Kent Intermediate Superintendents Association. They're holding a virtual news conference right now as they just share where they are in the planning stages for returning to school in the fall. And what we've learned from them here in the last hour is that they will be focusing on learning some lessons from the business community. They've going to be sending out a survey to all parents in Kent County, trying to get an idea of what parents are comfortable with too. We'll share much more of what they discussed and what we've learned from